Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Adam Bernstein providing tracking views for the Falcon 9 tonight. And Michael Kane is jumping in with our other wonderful moderators to make sure things stay kosher in the live chat. Continues to be a busy time here on Florida's Space Coast. Taking a look across the Cape, starting from left to right. Earlier this evening, we saw another tanking test from United Launch Alliance as they are testing out their Falcon rocket, which we now know is going to be launching no earlier than January 8th. They were unable to complete that first wet dress rehearsal that happened this past Friday, and so President and CEO Tory Bruno said they wanted to get through a full WDR, which is why they took the time to do that today, wrapping up a little before 8 o'clock this evening, or right about then. We're still waiting to hear from ULA as far as the success of this wet dress rehearsal tanking test. Of course, we'll keep you updated as we learn more about that. In the center of your screen, that is the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket at the heart of Space Launch Complex 40, Slick 40. Liftoff of this mission, the Starlink 6-34, is set for 11 o'clock tonight, Eastern Standard Time. For those joining around the world, that's 0400 UTC. This will be the 41st dedicated mission launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites. The reason that this mission is able to go forward tonight is because the rocket on the right, SpaceX Falcon Heavy, from our understanding, it is not going to be launching tomorrow, and we're expecting to learn more about the near future for the Falcon Heavy rocket supporting the USSF 52 mission in the next 24 hours or so. But we are not expecting it to launch tomorrow. So that sets the stage for Falcon 9 at Pad 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and the mission we have on tap tonight. If you'd like to help support our coverage of the space program, there's a quick and easy way to do that and allow more folks to find this coverage just by hitting the like button and sharing the stream. We're also, of course, supported by our wonderful channel members and viewers like you, so thanks to everyone who helps make a contribution to help fund our coverage. If you also like to join the conversation, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only do you give us interesting things to talk about or questions to answer, but you're also helping to support our coverage here and allow us to get closer to upgrading certain piece of equipment, allow us to broadcast all of these missions in 4K, something that we're very excited for. Now T-minus 55 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. Less than 20 minutes away from the point at which the launch director will give their go-ahead for the start of propellant load. Because SpaceX is not providing mission audio, though, we will not hear that call out when it happens. But we will rely on our experience of covering Falcon 9 missions to guide us visually through the count, and we'll get that mission audio in the last 5 minutes. SpaceX has support for this launch from Hangar site where they're running the countdown operations. It's the facility where they refurbish the Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights. They also have support in part from their control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, tonight's launch is targeting a T0 liftoff of 11 p.m. Eastern, 0400 UTC. If they have not started fueling, they do have multiple backup opportunities overnight until 2:58 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if for some reason tonight doesn't pan out at all, they do have additional backup opportunities during a launch window that opens tomorrow evening at 11:07 p.m. Eastern. Now T-minus 53 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. Coming into tonight's launch attempt, weather looking okay. It's forecast by the 45th Weather Squadron to be 65% favorable odds of weather at liftoff. Concerns for tonight were liftoff winds, the thick cloud layers rule, and the cumulus cloud rule. Through the course of the evening, we've started to see some of the thicker clouds move inward, or move inland, I should say, move away from the pad, so that appears to be a good sign for SpaceX for this launch tonight. They're also watching the upper level wind shear, which 45th Weather Squadron says is between low and moderate levels. If they do need to turn to that backup launch opportunity tomorrow, though, the weather does depreciate quite a bit. It's only 35% favorable launch conditions during the window tomorrow, with liftoff winds and the cumulus cloud rule being the primary concerns tomorrow. T-minus 52 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. Want to thank a couple folks for helping to support the coverage tonight. Alton Marsh with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Alton. With a, looks like a sad injured game console controller. No need to be sad. We do have a launch tonight, hopefully, if the weather and everything else cooperates. Mel Roberts Harold, also with a $5 super chat, says, take two. If SFN is on, so are we. Hey from Chicagoland. Hello to you from Florida. I imagine it's probably a good bit colder in Chicago than it is here. Certainly not as cold as it was last night. T-minus 51 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline for tonight's mission. As mentioned, the launch director will give the go-ahead for the start of propellant load at the T-minus 38 minute mark. If they do give that go-ahead, propellant load starts at T-minus 35 minutes with rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1, loading onto both the first and the second stages. At the second time, liquid oxygen will also be pumped aboard the first stage. At T-minus 16 minutes, liquid oxygen will start flowing onto the second stage of the Falcon 9. Before that, though, we'll see the so-called big vent from the strong back as the feed lines are chilled. That happens around T-minus 20 minutes and about 20 seconds. T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps that protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strung back retract sequence begin. It'll start with the clamp arms opening up just underneath the payload fairings. Then the transporter erector, or the strong back, reclines about 1.5 degrees away from the rocket, just a slight tilt. Stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb with the Falcon 9. At 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen loading should be complete. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. 45 seconds out, the launch director will give their go for liftoff. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer gives the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for liftoff at T0. This evening, continue to target 11 p.m. tonight. 0400 UTC. Now T-minus 48 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. A little less than 11 minutes away from the point at which the launch director will give that go-ahead for the start of propellant load. Now T-minus 47 minutes, 41 seconds and counting. Mel back with a $2 super chat, answering my query about the weather up in Chicago. It is a balmy 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, I jest, that is quite brisk, and I imagine there's probably a lake effect wind, as there quite often is, so hopefully all the folks joining us from Chicagoland are keeping warm tonight. One of our channel members, Dave Krupel, with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much for the support, Dave, and for being a channel member. Asks if it's not too pryish to ask, whereabouts are you set up to record this? The Saturn V building? Actually, we are here at the press site at KSC in a building lovingly referred to as the Fishbowl. It's actually the oldest building here at the press site. So we are overlooking the countdown clock and the flagpole. Stray shot out with views of Launch Complex 39, A and B, as well as some of the other sites around here. So yeah, sort of at the heart of the press site here. Thanks for the question, Dave. And we do have now official word from SpaceX that they are standing down from the Falcon Heavy tomorrow, as we indicated earlier in our broadcast. They state, and I quote, that they are standing down to, quote, perform additional system checkouts. The payload remains healthy while teams work toward the next best launch opportunity. We're also keeping an eye on the weather and will announce a new launch date once confirmed with the range. So again, just confirming what we were reporting earlier in the broadcast, that SpaceX is officially standing down from the launch attempt of the Falcon Heavy rocket, and a new launch date will be announced as soon as that information becomes available. Of course, we'll have that information as soon as we learn it up on our website, spaceflightnow.com, as well as on our social channels, Threads, X, Facebook, and the like. T-minus 43 minutes, 44 seconds and counting. For those that may have noticed our camera bouncing up and down a little bit, we are tied down and secured, but as I mentioned, the liftoff winds are a watch item for the launch tonight, and we are not immune to the wiles of the winds. And so while our camera is tied down and secure, it's not going to fall over mid-broadcast. It will bounce around just because it is quite blustery here at the press site. The flag next to the countdown clock is whipping quite aggressively, so we will wait and see if the winds are an impact to the launch itself, and we'll of course update you if there's any delay in the start of fueling and the launch tonight. As I mentioned before, they do have opportunities for a launch until 2:58 a.m. Eastern time, as long as they have not started fueling, so we will continue to keep an eye on that. Now T-minus 41 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. As we continue to step through this countdown tonight, let's go ahead and take a look at where the Falcon 9 will be going once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 will be lifting off from the pad here at Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Apologies, the mic was off. Talking about the trajectory tonight, the Falcon 9, after it lifts off from Pad 40 at Space Launch Complex 40 over Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, it'll fly in a southeast trajectory towards the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. The one on deck tonight is a short fall of gravitas. The upper stage will then continue on with the Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will jettison a little over 3 minutes into the mission and will land under parachutes in the Atlantic, where they will be scooped up by the recovery vessel dubbed Bob. The other vessel, Doug, has been off the coast of Virginia, North Carolina, ready to support the Falcon Heavy launch, but of course, with that standing down officially now, we'll have to see if Doug makes its way back to Florida or if it's going to hang out there for a while, and that may be an indication of how long the Falcon Heavy is sidelined for the USSF 52 mission. So keep an eye on the ocean for that. These 2 recovery vessels were named after former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the duo that flew aboard the Demo 2 mission, kicking off the commercial crew program for SpaceX back in May of 2020. We're getting some viewing support, tracking support for tonight's mission from our friend Chuck Briggs. Taking a look at his camera's perspective. Another good side view of the crew and cargo access tower that'll help support Dragon missions from Pad 40, a capability that as of right now has, or up to now I should say, has only been available at Historic Launch Complex 39A. Now just about 20 seconds away from the launch director making the call on the start of fueling. Well, we won't hear that call out. Again, fueling, if the go-ahead is given, will start in 3 minutes at T-minus 35 minutes. I want to thank one of our channel members, Callistia Lee, for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Callistia, for supporting at that level. It says, good evening, all. Checking in from Port St. Lucie here in Florida. Hit that like button. Thank you for a wonderful suggestion, Callistia. It's a great free way to help support what we do here with these live streams, and it allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and bring this coverage to more folks. So would certainly appreciate it if you hit the like button. And if you already have, thanks for doing so. Taking a little peek into the future after this mission launches. These will be the mission stats for SpaceX after the launch of Starlink 6-34, coming up in 37 minutes. This will be the third flight of Falcon 9 booster 1081, the 282nd Falcon 9 launch to date. This will be the 88th Falcon 9 launch of 2023, the 226th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This will be the 92nd SpaceX orbital launch of 2023, the 97th orbital launch in the last 365 days. It's set to be the 160th SpaceX orbital launch from Pad 40, the 215th overall orbital launch from this pad, and the 69th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. That's launches from both Cape Canaveral Space Force Station as well as NASA's Kennedy Space Center. No T-minus 35 minutes, 49 seconds and counting. Assuming there's nothing else intrusive on this launch tonight. Oh, well, actually, we do have an update. SpaceX has adjusted the launch time to 11:39 p.m. Eastern. Again, the new T0 has shifted to 11:39 p.m. tonight. So we'll go ahead and readjust our countdown clock momentarily. Stand by. And with that adjustment, we are now back at T-minus 1 hour, 13 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. As I noted, because SpaceX had not started the fueling process, so the go-ahead was not given at the T-minus 38-minute mark as we were counting down previously. Likely they may not have reached that point in the count before they decided to adjust the T0. But they do have opportunities until 2:58 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, as long as they have not started the fueling operations. An explicit reason wasn't given for the adjustment of the T0 liftoff time, but again, the winds continue to be quite prevalent here at the Cape. So that certainly could be an impacting factor. Now T-minus 1 hour, 4 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. We'll continue to keep our eye on that T0 time, but again, SpaceX currently targeting 11:39 p.m. Eastern Time, 04:39 UTC. Again, apologies for the aggressive camera shake there. It is still quite blustery here at the KSC press site. And while the camera is secure, there's only so much we can do to combat the wind without just entirely putting the camera in a box. Speaking of things that are encapsulated, let's talk about what's encapsulated in those payload fairings at the top of the Falcon 9 rocket. 23 Starlink satellites, the payload getting ready to head up to low Earth orbit if everything cooperates this evening. Photo on the center of your screen is a file photo of what the Starlink V2 mini satellites look like when they are stacked in their launch configuration. This photo taken before another Starlink launch. Tonight will be the 41st launch of these V2 minis. This will also be the 61st Starlink launch in 2023. Each of these satellites comes in at about 1,760 pounds, or about 800 kilograms. After the solar panels unfurl, they have a wingspan of 100 feet, or 30 meters. They use argon hull thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers, and were built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. As of now, SpaceX has yet to publish a rendering or a photo of what the V2 mini version of the Starlink satellites look like in their on-orbit configuration. We do have a somewhat grainy photo, but the best we have of what they look like when they're orbiting the Earth. This photo captured by a satellite owned by the Australian company AGO Robotics from one of its satellites. And as it so happens, just about a day or so ago, they published a photo of Amazon's Project Kuiper satellite and what it looks like on orbit. Amazon as well has not published photos or renderings of any sort of its Kuiper satellites for its low Earth orbit internet constellation, which will be launching through a variety of launch providers: ULA, Arianespace, as well as Blue Origin. Though the first batches will launch on ULA's Atlas V rocket, Amazon did purchase 43 Vulcan flights for upcoming Project Kuiper missions, though ULA President CEO Tory Bruno says those Vulcan flights of Kuiper missions are not going to be launching until at least 2025. They will likely fly out all of the Atlas V rockets before moving on to the Vulcan ones. Now T minus 58 minutes, 54 seconds and counting to our current T0 time of 11:39 p.m. Eastern. Taking a quick peek at the live chat, want to thank Beat Enough Florida for a $5 super chat. So she's joining from Port St. Lucie as well, and like all of us, just waiting for the launch. Hopefully the winds calm down a little bit and the weather conditions become optimal for launch tonight. We'll certainly keep an eye on that. T minus 56 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. For those of you who may have been recently joining us and were not with us when we made this update, SpaceX is standing down from its launch attempt of the Falcon Heavy rocket over at Pad 39A here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Say they need additional time to perform more systems checkouts. They do clarify that the X-37B space plane, the payload for this mission, does remain healthy while they are working towards the next launch opportunity. They're also, as with all the missions, keeping an eye out for the weather. But we will not have a launch of the Falcon Heavy tomorrow. That will be TBD, but be sure to keep an eye on our launch schedule over at our website, spaceflightnow.com, as well as on our social pages. Spaceflight Now is on X, Threads, and Facebook, and as soon as we have a new launch date for the Falcon Heavy and the USSF 52 mission, we will bring that to you when we learn it. It's coming up on a busy time for Pad 39A, though, as Intuitive Machines also looking to use Pad 39A for the launch of its Nova C lander, heading to the moon's south pole. Before this launch slip, they were targeting liftoff at the start of their January window on January 12th. We'll have to wait and see how much of an impact the delay of this Falcon Heavy launch has for the IM-1 mission, one of the first missions under NASA's CLPS program, Commercial Lunar Payload Services. The other one, of course, that is getting ready to launch under the CLPS program is the Peregrine lunar lander that will launch on the first ULA Vulcan rocket. Another bit of news we're also waiting on is the results of that tanking test from ULA that wrapped up earlier this evening. As of now, United Launch Alliance has not given an update on the results of that fueling operation. You see the rocket sitting out there at Space Launch Complex 41 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. A much quieter scene than earlier on today, when they fully fueled the rocket and brought it right down about to the T0 mark, simulating the launch day countdown timeline. The payload is safe and sound over at Astrotech, where it will be encapsulated ahead of its launch. ULA President CEO Tori Bruno said that launch now looking to be no earlier than January 8th. So potentially lots of moon activities happening in January. But we'll have to see how much of an impact the delay of the Falcon Heavy has on the IM-1 mission. Intuitive Machines does need to launch from Pad 39A, though. You may recall that iSpace's lander that launched last year, it was able to launch from Slick 40, where the Falcon 9 currently is, that you see there on the right-hand side of your screen. The reason that Intuitive Machines needs to launch from Pad 39A is because its lander also uses liquid methane and liquid oxygen as its propellant, and it needs to be fueled as close to liftoff as humanly possible. And in order to do that, SpaceX's built-in capabilities to allow for fueling right up until the time of launch, or just a little bit before, but they can only do that at Pad 39A. And of course, not too far beyond that, there will be the Crew 8 mission targeting liftoff from, again, Pad 39A. That's coming up in February. So lots of traffic building up on that historic launch pad, all of which starts with the need to get that Falcon Heavy off to the races. TBD on when that will happen now. Now, T-minus 51 minutes, 14 seconds and counting to the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket tonight on the Starlink 6-34 mission. At this moment in time, SpaceX continues to target that T0 liftoff at 11:39 p.m. Eastern. Again, they do have until 2:58 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday, December 13th. As long as they have not started fueling, they can continue to shuffle the liftoff time back again. We're now just about 12.5 minutes away from the point at which the call would be made on the start of propellant load, coming up at T-minus 38 minutes. So between now and then, we'll be sure to keep our eyes peeled on the information coming in from SpaceX to see if they do decide to shuffle that launch time yet again. In the meantime, I want to thank Christopher Jones for $5 super chat, helping support the channel. Thank you so much, Christopher. T-minus 49 minutes, 32 seconds and counting, as we await the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the launch timeline looks like. So after the rocket leaves the pad at 11:39 p.m. Eastern, we're hoping. This is where things go from here. T plus 1 minute 12 seconds. The Falcon 9 passes through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Then T plus 2 minutes 30 seconds is MECO, first stage main engine cutoff. where the 9 Merlin engines on the Falcon 9 will cease firing. It's followed up at T plus 2 minutes 34 seconds with stage separation, and then the second stage engine ignition, or SES-1, at 2 minutes 40 seconds into flight. The payload fairings will be jettisoned at T plus 3 minutes 10 seconds. At T plus 6 minutes 14 seconds will be the first burn of the first stage. That'll last for 18 seconds, starting at T plus 6 minutes 14 seconds. The landing burn begins at T plus 8 minutes and 6 seconds as the Falcon 9 first stage booster 1081 makes its way back down towards the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas waiting out in the Atlantic for it. It'll touch down at about T plus 8 minutes 28 seconds. That Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will cease firing at T plus 8 minutes 44 seconds. We'll enter into a coast phase until T plus 54 minutes and 9 seconds, when the vacuum engine will kick back on for 2 seconds, setting up the Starlink deployment, coming up at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 27 seconds. At T minus 47 minutes, 29 seconds to the current T0 liftoff time of 11:39 p.m. Eastern. As we have been, we will continue to watch to see in the next 10 minutes or so if there is another alteration to that T0 liftoff time. Do want to thank a couple more folks for their support this evening. Sarah Shea with a $5 super chat donation. Thank you so much, Sarah. Says, thanks Spaceflight Now for always being there, and we certainly enjoy bringing all these launches to you live and bringing you as robust coverage as we possibly can. And Go To Watch with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Go To. Really appreciate all of you being with us tonight from wherever you're joining us. And Go To Watch with another $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Go To. The happy corgi clapping. And Charlie Cruz with a $2 super chat says, on behalf of Amy. Hello, Amy. And thank you, Charlie. Big thanks to one of our channel members, Mark Otto, for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. So to JB, Jordan McGregor, FHL, Aaron C, One Dev 2 Bricks, MLG Pure, Kermy, F Huber, Peter Zekas, PB Stargazer, and Tom R, for all those who just were gifted memberships. Be sure to thank Mark in the live chat. Really appreciate that, and hope you enjoy channel membership. Has a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to 4K views of all of the launches we have here at the Cape. And access to our member-only videos, including the full interview we did with Dr. Walt Lauderdale ahead of the planned launch of the X-37B spaceplane and the Falcon Heavy rocket. That full video, a little more than 20 minutes, I believe. It's up on the channel right now, available to all of our channel members. It's a good conversation, so hopefully you enjoy that as well. And again, big ups to Mark Otto. Thank you, sir. Also want to thank Marcus Gallegos. Apologies, Marcus, if I mispronounced your last name, but thanks for the $5 super chat. Says, keep up the great work, guys. Also, chat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Appreciate the kind suggestion, Marcus. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so and ring the notification bell so you're alerted whenever we do go live. Our thanks as well to the Omega Red 2 for a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Omega. I don't know if Elon and Zuck are actually going to come to fisticuffs, but, you know, they're grown men, they're billionaires. I'm sure they can hash it out in other ways. But thanks for the support. Also, thanks to another one of our wonderful channel members, Dan Johnston, for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Thank you so much, Dan. That's very kind of you. That membership goes to Adi and Bob the Cat full time. So, Adi and Bob, hope you enjoy channel membership, as is the case with all the folks that were granted membership by Mark Otto. It's great to see support for our community this time of year, especially. The T-minus 41 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. Just double checking. SpaceX continues to target 11:39 p.m. Eastern for the launch of the Starlink 6-34 mission. The call for the start of propellant load coming up in just about 2.5 minutes. Again, as a reminder, if they don't start fueling, they do have the opportunity to slide back the T0 liftoff time, so we'll be sure to watch for that, as the winds are still quite aggressive, just by taking a look out the window and seeing our camera continue to bob out there. As we did note in the chat, there was a wind gust of 27 miles per hour less than 30 minutes ago at 10:30. It's the strongest gust we've seen today, so the wind continues to be quite aggressive this evening. Want to thank Destitute for a €5 super chat. Thank you so much, Destitute. Says, it's almost 5 a.m. over here. U.S. Army 11 Bravo here. Can't wait to see this thing launch. Well, certainly hope wind doesn't play spoiler to yours and all of our plans this evening, Destitute, but really appreciate the support with the super chat, and hopefully we can get a launch on the other side of it. Now less than a minute to the point at which the launch director would make a call on the starter propellant load. In the meantime, I want to thank a couple more folks for their support this evening. To Madre Khan with a wonderful $10 super chat. This is watching from Loxahatchee, Florida. Go, baby, go. Thank you so much to Madre. Now T-minus 37 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. For those that were not with us the first time we went through the launch countdown timeline, let's go over that briefly. Again, we're about a minute past the point at which the launch director would give their call for the start of propellant load if SpaceX is in fact ready to launch in 36 minutes, 49 seconds. If that go-ahead was in fact given, then at T-minus 35 minutes, rocket-grade kerosene or RP-1 loading begins on the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen is also pumped aboard the first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, LOX starts flowing onto the second stage. Before that, we see the so-called big vent from the strong back as the feed lines are chilled, the launch pad. That big vent comes up about T-minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds or so. Then at T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines begins. Involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps, protecting the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. T-minus 4 minutes, 30 seconds. The strong back retract begins from the Falcon 9, tilting back about 1.5 degrees. Stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it pulls back much more aggressively. 2 minutes out, LOX loading should be full on the vehicle, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final minute before liftoff, the control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. 45 seconds out, the launch director gives their go for liftoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all the engines ignite and are healthy, the computer gives the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a liftoff at T0. And as it stands right now, that T0 is 11:39 p.m. tonight. SpaceX, at this point, will have started fueling, assuming that the countdown has not been adjusted. If fueling has in fact started, you can see just beneath the word SpaceX at the bottom of the X where the booster is still fairly white. You can see it's a little bit more of a gray gradient. There'll be a little frost ring that starts to form right around that part of the rocket. That'll be our visual indication that SpaceX has begun fueling. And SpaceX confirming in the last minute that propellant load has begun for tonight's launch. They say that all systems and weather are currently go. So, despite the blustery conditions, things appear to have calmed down enough for SpaceX to have confidence in fueling and to go for a launch attempt at 11:39 p.m. And with that start of fueling, they're committing themselves to that time. So even though there's still little time left in the backup or in the launch window because fueling is now underway, they're going to go for it. We're at T-minus 28 minutes, 28 seconds and counting. About a minute and a half or so ago, helium loading began on the pressure vessels on the first stage. Helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. It'll be followed up by cryogenic helium being loaded onto the storage tanks on the second stage at about T-minus 25 minutes. As we get closer to liftoff, T-minus 27 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. Let's talk about the vehicle that will be launching tonight, SpaceX's workhorse, the Falcon 9 rocket. It stands at 70 meters or 229 feet tall. It has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Most of that is made up by the first stage of the rocket. This booster has flown twice before. Tail number 1081 in the SpaceX fleet, looking to make its third flight tonight. At the base of the first stage are the 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen and produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, tonight they are using the drone ship a short fall of gravitas. It is standing by near the Caribbean, waiting for this booster to make its landing about 8.5 minutes into flight. Above the first stage is the inner stage, a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side, you see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These titanium winglets provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. Or a return to landing site mission, as does happen sometimes. Tonight will be a drone ship landing, though. At the top of the inner stage are the 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. At first stage, main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium that I mentioned a moment ago is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is safely housed inside of the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Above the inner stage, the second stage, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine, same with the first stage 9 Merlin engines, burns the propellant mix of RP1, or rocket-grade kerosene, and liquid oxygen. And it will ignite for a third time after the deployment of the Starlink satellites for a deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of any unnecessary space debris for this mission. And finally, at the top of the rocket are the payload fairings that are housing the 23 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite material. They are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage booster lands on the drone ship. They gently splash down under parachutes. They'll be scooped up by the recovery ship, brought back to Port Canaveral, same with the booster, where they will be refurbished and turned around for a future mission if they are deemed ready to do so. And T-minus 24 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 23 minutes and counting. Next big visual milestone coming up is the big vent. It'll happen at T-minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds or so. Good visual indication that fueling remains on track tonight. It'll last a few minutes, stopping at about T-minus 16 minutes, 30 seconds, just before LOX loading on the second stage begins. Want to welcome our newest channel member to channel membership, Chris Blagg, joining us at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that, Chris. Thank you so much for supporting us in that way. Chris, like our other channel members, now has access to discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflynow.com, where you see we have things like NASA and SpaceX embroidered mission patches. Channel membership also includes access to our member-only videos and live 4K views of all the launches from Cape Canaveral. As we approach the big vent, also want to thank a few more folks. Magrum Blythe with a $10 super chat. Thanks so much, Magrum. Says, stop the wind in all caps, blowing as hard as I can in the opposite direction. Well, I believe that was sent before we heard from SpaceX that fueling had begun, so it seems like that may have done the trick. Appreciate that. Appreciate the support with the super chat. Also, thanks to Madre Khan for a very generous $20 super chat. Says Spacebat will be disappointed if we don't launch tonight. I think there are probably a few folks in our live chat that will be disappointed as well if we don't launch tonight. Also, Raccoon with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Raccoon. Asking if there is a raccoon or a rocket or a raccoon on the rocket. I would certainly hope not. I think that would potentially cause a scrub, and we certainly don't want to see another rocket have to stand down tonight. So hopefully all the wildlife is keeping its distance from the vehicle this evening. Thank you so much for the super chat. Destitute with another €5 super chat. Thank you so much for coming back again, Destitute. Says, stuck here in Germany. Me and my son are watching. Thank you guys for keeping us updated. Let's go. We are certainly happy to do so. And we see the start of the big vent there at the pad. That venting trailing off perpendicular from the rocket, so you can see how blustery the wind is. But another good sign that fueling continues on right on time here for the Falcon 9 rocket tonight. T-minus 18 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. Steven is watching the technical side of the broadcast, noting that we are just passing over 131,000 subscribers. So thanks to everyone who's helping support our coverage here. If you haven't already, go ahead and click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you get alerted whenever we do go live, which is more and more often these days, as there's quite a number of missions heading up from the Cape here as well as around the world. got a Rocket Lab Electron rocket launch coming up in just a few days. Following the launch of this particular rocket, Falcon 9 supporting the Starlink 6-34 mission. They have a Swedish company that is also looking to launch Ovzon, sending up their Ovzon 3 satellite to geostationary orbit. We actually had the opportunity to talk with some of the folks at Ovzon earlier today, so be sure to keep an eye out on our website, spaceflightnow.com, as well as the YouTube channel here for upcoming coverage of that launch. Good conversation about their satellite, which helps support both civil and military capabilities. So good conversation coming to our channels in the very near future. Now T-minus 16 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. We're winding down the big vent, should be wrapping up in about the next 10-15 seconds or so. That'll be followed at T-minus 16 minutes for the start of LOX loading on the vehicle. Taking a peek at the live chat again, want to thank Robert Allen for a $2 super chat. And I will echo his sentiments. He's dedicating the super chat to his superhero, Astro Joe, his and mine, one of our wonderful moderators, helping to make sure that everyone can be welcomed and have a good conversation in the live chat. So our thanks to wonderful moderators, Astro Joe, Dremwolf, or Michael Kane jumping in to help this evening as well in the live chat. Stephanie B, of course. And Rusty Shackelford as well. Thanks to all of our fabulous moderators. T-minus 15 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. The big vent has wrapped up. LOX loading has begun. The next milestone on the count coming up at T-minus 7 minutes, where the Merlin engine chill down the first stage will begin. I want to thank one of our wonderful channel members, Callistia Lee, for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. It's not showing me who that went to, but welcome to channel membership. Hope you enjoy your time here. One of our other channel members, Norman Reitzel, with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Norman. Good to see you again. It says the and we do have a weather update to provide, knowing though this may be. There is a strong wind warning in effect currently, calling for winds of 20 knots gusting to 35 knots from across both the Cape and NASA Kennedy. And you can see the evidence of that with our camera bobbing and weaving aggressively at random intervals. Again, that strong wind warning currently in effect for winds for winds of 20 knots and gusting up to 35 knots. The liftoff winds have been a watch item for at least a day heading into tonight's launch opportunities, so we'll have to wait and see if things are able to calm down in the next 12 minutes, but just as a forewarning, we may get a bit of a disappointing update in the next little bit here, but we'll hold out hope and we'll be with you until they call the ball game. I'll put it like that. Well, I'll hold out hope here. Want to thank Gage the Scout for a $5 super chat. Really appreciate that, Gage. Says, just finished my Eagle Scout and wanted to give money to my favorite channel. Well, that is very kind of you to say, Gage. We're happy to bring you live launch coverage that makes it your favorite channel. So thank you for that. Want to welcome a new channel member, Lloyd Green, joining at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Lloyd. Glad to have you with us. Charlie Cruz with a $2 super chat says, on behalf of all the optimists that stuck around, well, hopefully optimism will win the day this evening. I give a big thanks to Gary Haynes for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now channel memberships. Thank you so much, Gary. And those are going to Duo Maxwell, Robert Allen, Noel's Gig, 111, Vector K, and MLG Pure. Or I'm sorry, and to Ryan B 1803. MLG Pure is already one of our channel members. So thank you, Gary, and welcome to our newest channel members there. Now T-minus 9 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. And one of our regulars, Nelson Reyes, joining us this evening with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Nelson. Says once again, thanks for the great coverage. We are more than happy to do so. And just on the off chance that I missed it, don't want to look past giving you your flowers, Callistia. Thank you for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships as well. Really, really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Our T-minus 8 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. Again, that strong wind warning is in effect currently. Calling for those winds of 20 knots, gusting up to 35 knots. As fueling is well in swing, they will likely bring this right down to the wire. But as soon as we have an update, we will let you know whether it is a launch or standing down. We'll continue to hold out hope for a launch, though. And as we like to say with rocketry, whenever the engines ignite, we like to call that lighting the candle. And we certainly hope we're able to light this candle for one very particular person with us tonight, our Adam Bernstein, celebrating his birthday today. So show him some love in the live chat. Our wonderful photographer, Adam, coming into work and helping to hopefully track a rocket launch tonight. He is a trooper, and we will have some donuts as a reward for either a launch or not a launch, but it's a good day because it's Adam's birthday. Happy birthday, bud. A T-minus 6 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. We're now a little bit past, or just coming up on a minute from when the engine chill sequence will have begun. Coming up next at T-minus 4 minutes, 30 seconds will be the strong back retract sequence. As we approach the final 5 minutes of the count, if you haven't already, if you could hit the like button, as we're just kicking over 15,000 of you joining us. And for those that are just hopping aboard in the last couple of minutes, welcome. We're just over 5 minutes away from the scheduled launch of the Starlink 6-34 mission, sending up 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites up to low Earth orbit. SpaceX battling some strong winds tonight, hoping to find calm enough conditions to launch their Falcon 9 rocket. I want to thank a few more folks for their support as we get ready for launch. We're now seeing pad views from SpaceX, and we're getting mission audio as well. So if I pause intermittently, it's only to allow for all of us to hear call-outs from SpaceX.
Strong back retract has started.
Just a bit of housekeeping. Our countdown clock is a little bit ahead of SpaceX's. That is because ours is in real time, SpaceX showing on a delay. As we get down to the last few minutes here, I want to thank Larry Osborne. Welcome him to channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome, Larry. Now has access to 4K views of this and all the launches from here at the Cape. Air Force Vet with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Air Force Vet. Buckets of Presents with their own present, gifting a Spaceflight Now membership to Ray 1144. Really appreciate the generosity, Buckets. Also want to thank Callistia Lee for continued generosity tonight with another $5 super chat, saying, "You're welcome, Will. Just spreading the Spacefly Now love just a little." And we are very appreciative of that. The T-minus 2 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. SpaceX is wrapping up fueling on the Falcon 9 rocket.
Stage 1 Pogo. Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And you hear that call out for LOX loading on stage 1 wrapping up. Should hear the similar call out for stage 2 at about T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds. I want to give a big shout out to Soldiers for Christian Life Ministries, one of our channel members, for a very generous $50 super chat. Thank you so much, Soldiers. Says, I remember the Apollo 11 moon landing. Spaceflight is still awesome today. And I could not agree more. Very excited to see the next era of moon landings.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call out, the Falcon 9 now fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant.
Abort. Launch abort is running.
And unfortunately, we did have a launch abort tonight, just before a minute out from liftoff. We'll listen to see if there's an update from SpaceX, but I'm betting it is due to the strong winds here at the Cape. We'll stand by for more. SpaceX has ended their live stream without an update on the reason for the hold. Though I think it's a fair assumption to say that the cause, if not the cause, certainly an impacting factor is likely the wind, as about 15 or so minutes ago we did get word that there was a strong wind warning in effect, calling for winds of 20 knots, gusting to 35 knots. So we will keep our eyes open to see if SpaceX does provide any additional information about their scrub call tonight. But again, because they had started fueling, they are standing down from tonight's launch attempt. They're not able to recycle this evening, and they will go for another launch attempt as early as tomorrow. That launch window opens up at 11:07 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow night. As we mentioned early on in the broadcast, though, for those of you who were not with us when we talked about the launch weather forecast, weather tonight or weather tomorrow is even less ideal than what we had heading into tonight's opportunity. It's only 35% favorable weather odds tomorrow night. Again, the cumulus cloud rule as well as the liftoff winds remain watch items for launch window tomorrow. So as blustery as things were tonight, they do not pick up in a favorable way in the 24-hour turnaround. So we'll have to wait and see when SpaceX is able to launch this mission. The knock-on effects of this, of course, is that the Avzon 3 geostationary communications satellite will also slip at least a day, now likely targeting liftoff on the 17th. There's a 1 point looking at a Friday launch when this Starlink was going to go earlier in the week yesterday. They are currently targeting the 16th, but likely going to be slipping now to the 17th. And perhaps later if SpaceX is not able to launch this Starlink mission tomorrow or the day after. So unfortunately, the second launch that has been called off for SpaceX today, as we did get word earlier as we reported that they are standing down from the Falcon Heavy launch of the USSF 52 mission while they continue to work on things there with the vehicle. Don't have an official reason for the scrub of the Falcon 9 tonight, but very likely due to weather conditions being far from favorable. Do want to acknowledge a few folks, though, that supporting our coverage tonight. Kay Taggerty with a $5 super chat. Really appreciate that, Kay. Tumadre Khan with a $10 super chat. This coming, of course, before the launch was officially scrubbed, saying don't scrub because that pushes back the ULA test. Well, actually, Tumadre, ULA already completed their wet dress rehearsal, or at least they conducted their wet dress rehearsal test earlier today before SpaceX even started fueling the Falcon 9 rocket. So we are waiting word from United Launch Alliance on the results of that wet dress tanking test to see if they were able to go through their full procedures as they were hoping. I'll be sure to update you on our website, spaceflightnow.com, as well as on our social channels. Lee Barreto with a $5 super chat, saying, so excited, I hope this happens. Of course, that coming in before the launch scrub. But thank you, Lee. Really appreciate the support. Also, Ricardo Orozoko M with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Ricardo. Peppa also with a $2 super chat, saying, woo-wee, I'm itching for a rodeo. Go and get it, wind. Well, unfortunately, the wind did go and get it, and we all done got. So, Agnes Amon with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Agnes. Also, $2 super chat from Adam Gibbs. And Adam Gibbs coming back not too long after that with a very generous $20 super chat. And looks like Adam is in the construction business. A lot of work to be done around the country, so hopefully, Adam, you're getting some good work there. Thanks for the support. And to Callistia Lee for another $10 super chat, saying thanks to all of you at Spaceflight Now for the great coverage as always. Keeping my fingers crossed for tomorrow night, and we will too, certainly. Although the weather seems like it's possibly going to be thwarting tomorrow's opportunity as well, but we will keep you posted as we learn more. So just a quick recap of the night before we go ahead and sign off this evening. Got about to T-minus 1 minute when SpaceX called the scrub of the Falcon 9 launch for the Starlink 6-34 mission. Still awaiting official word from SpaceX as to the reasoning for the scrub call. But of course, we did have a strong wind warning with winds 20 knots gusting up to 34 knots, which are far from ideal conditions for a launch tonight. TBD on when they will try again, as the weather tomorrow looks even worse than it did today, with only a 35% odds of favorable conditions, liftoff winds, and cumulus clouds again being watch items from the meteorology perspective, the 45th Weather Squadron launch forecast. Also getting word earlier tonight of the indefinite hold on the USSF 52 mission aboard the SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket. As previously mentioned, they are calling that off for now in order to perform additional system checkouts. The X-37B spaceplane itself, though, we're told remains healthy, and they're looking at the possibilities of when they can launch again. As with the Falcon 9, they are continuing to look at the weather outlook as well. And the last SpaceX watch item of the evening, the Cargo Dragon, currently docked to the International Space Station, also weather on the mind, as it was supposed to undock from the station and start making its way down for a splash off the coast of Florida. But again, weather being the spoiling factor, they are delaying undocking until at least this Friday. Again, that is entirely weather dependent, so we will have to wait and see what that looks like when it does splash down, or when they are able to undock it. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and wind things up for tonight. Really appreciate all of you for joining us for our live launch attempt coverage, as SpaceX not able to best the wind, unfortunately, this evening. We'll be back to bring you the next SpaceX launches as they happen. There is a mission heading up from Vandenberg Space Force Base that is currently on the books. Although that may have also slipped a day. We are working to learn more about that. That is the Starlink 7-9 mission. So lots of adjustments being made on the SpaceX front this week. Being counted on Spaceflight now to bring you all the updates on those as they happen, so that you're kept in the loop when next to come back for live launch coverage, and we'll be right here with you. So our thanks to Chuck Briggs for being ready and waiting for a launch tonight. To all of our wonderful moderators helping to keep things moving in the live chat. And to Michael Kane for helping to lend a hand in that space as well this evening. Sorry to the birthday boy for not getting a 9 Merlin candle this evening, but once again, happy birthday to our tracking photographer, Adam Bernstein. Happy birthday. Thanks to Stephen Young, as always, for running the technical aspects of the show. Anytime you want to catch views of pads here in Florida, as well as at Starbase, be sure to tune into our 24-hour live channel, Launchpad Live. I'm Will Robinson Smith for Spaceflight Now. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and we will see you next time. Good night.